We're clicking the live stream to YouTube button at the same time, but we continue to see folk roll in. For those of you who are here, it's a delight that you are here. For those of you who are just joining, we're going to get started in just a minute or three. We have quite a lot of content to cover. The live stream is going live as we speak, and we want to make sure that we cover it on both places. I continue to see people come in as attendees. Welcome. We are so delighted that you are here. Give us just a few moments, and we're going to get started here in just a minute or two.
Thanks, Tyler. While we wait, do you want us to welcome some of the folks that we see? I think we recognize
Absolutely. If there are people that you recognize, we should totally welcome them for being here. Absolutely.
I see lots of names that I recognize, as well as some new names. Brenda, welcome. I see Casey. I also see CEM. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Is it Cam? I hope I'm not mispronouncing. So nice to see you. Welcome, everybody. Really excited to share what's happening in ClickHouse Cloud. Alexei, do you see any names that you recognize? I know some folks also come to our monthly calls, so I'm curious if you're noticing some names that from that call.
Yeah, I see a lot of familiar names. Hi, Larry Law, Jeff, Josh. So many interesting people. And I'm especially happy if you are listening to this webinar after our monthly release webinar. Interesting. Actually, there is no competition, but it is still interesting to know your opinion.
Amazing. So we're going to get live started here. Sorry, live is the wrong word. In just a minute or two. Before we do, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for attending. We're continuing to see people join as attendees. We're continuing to see people join on YouTube. Whichever medium you choose to watch on, your questions matter. So feel free to ask them in chat. Feel free to use the Q&A tool. If you're on YouTube, hit us up in chat. Several of us are hanging out there. We're going to collate as many of them as we can, answer them throughout the session, but then also answer them live at the end. We're going to give it just another 30 seconds or so as I continue to see the attendee number click up. It's always the joy of running a live event is who is going to come, who's going to love what we have to say, who's going to be frustrated by it, and then who's going to watch it on video in the future. And as Alexei and Tanya mentioned, there are quite a few names that we recognize here. And for those of you who join our ClickHouse community call monthly, where we talk about the monthly release, we are delighted to see you here. For those of you who don't, we're also delighted to welcome you to join us. Amazing. So I know we have an immense amount of content. Welcome, honestly, gratefully, and deeply, thank you for joining us on the ClickHouse Cloud update call. We have quite a bit to go through, as I just mentioned, but I see several of you have joined. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in chat, be that on this platform or on YouTube. Please feel free to use the Q&A tool. We have quite a bit to dig into. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Tanya. Tanya, take us away on the ClickHouse Cloud update call.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Hopefully folks can see my screen. Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much. Yes, we do have a lot of content to get through. So I'm going to kick us off. First of all, for those of you that may not be familiar with ClickHouse Cloud yet, some of you are here for the first time. It is a managed service for ClickHouse, which is an OLAP database, a real-time OLAP database, as we like to say. So hopefully at least you're familiar with ClickHouse, but if not, again, this is a great database for your real-time analytical workloads. It is open source. You can use it in a self-managed way, but a cloud service provides a great way to use ClickHouse, whether you're a new or experienced user. It has what you would expect from a mature cloud service, an administrative workbench where you can see your tooling, You can take administrative actions and see what's happening in your service, as well as an immersive SQL console for yourself, as well as the analysts working with data in the service. The architecture of ClickHouse Cloud is quite distinguished. We separated storage and compute, which is not something you typically see in real-time analytical workflows. So we're really pushing the envelope here, and we'll talk later on in the webinar, not only about features of ClickHouse as a user, but under the hood, how we are achieving real-time performance in this kind of architecture that has many benefits. We're able to seamlessly scale your compute. We're able to provide access to virtually unlimited storage, so you don't have to worry about combining those two types of resources and really think about that resource allocation. So we'll dig into specifics of where we are with this architecture and where we're evolving toward kind of the middle and end of the presentation. In terms of how we go to market, when you sign up for a ClickHouse Cloud service, you have access to different service types. You can actually spin up any combination of them. We don't gate them. So for instance, if you're just starting, you may start with a development service, as we call it. It's very cost effective and great for small workloads. Once you go into production, you may choose from a number of kind of sizes. As I mentioned, production tier automatically scales, so you don't even really have to think about that in that tier. And finally, we have dedicated, which is more specialized for kind of highly sensitive workloads and that have special requirements. The service is currently available in AWS and GCP, as well as through marketplaces, and coming soon to other cloud providers. So hopefully that's enough of an intro for anybody that's new, and we're going to jump straight to the agenda. And because we're in the beginning of 2024, we're going to focus somewhat on recently released features, but we're going to provide quite a bit of insight into where we're going with the service throughout the year, and we'll be providing updates as we go, hopefully on a quarterly basis. So we're going to start off with the cloud platform. Then again, we'll talk about the user console, security and reliability, features of the service, core platform features, and finally integrations. So as we go, we'll introduce speakers. At this point, we're going to start with Kritika, who is the product manager responsible for our cloud platform. She's been with us for almost 2 years from the inception of the cloud before we even went into private preview. And she will give us an update as to what's happening with the cloud platform overall. So Kritika, if you wouldn't mind, please take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Tanya. So in this section, I'm going to cover where we are with the cloud platform today and talk about some of the big projects that we're taking on this year in terms of expansion and ensuring more reach and flexibility when it comes to deployments of ClickHouse Cloud. Next slide, please. So for those of you that are new to ClickHouse, we announced general availability of the ClickHouse Cloud offering in December of 2022. We launched first in AWS. And since then, as you can see on the map, we've quickly expanded to multiple geographies and also added support to GCP in just about 6 months since launch. With AWS today, we have coverage in 9 regions across United States, United Kingdom, Europe, Asia, and Australia. With GCP, we support 4 regions across United States, Europe, and Asia. And we're continuing to grow, gauging demand from our users. Next slide, please. So that being said, what are we taking on this year? So this should come as no surprise. The next on the list of expansion is supporting deployments in Azure. This would be in service of giving users as much flexibility and freedom of choice when it comes to running ClickHouse as a managed offering. And in some sense, completes the cloud story for ClickHouse with support for the 3 major cloud platforms. The timeline for private preview is March of this year and GA targeting mid-year. We already have a waitlist page where you can submit interest, and we'll be in touch with updates. And that's not all. We've set a rather ambitious target for this year to introduce a new model of deployment that we're calling Bring Your Own Cloud, BYOC for short. This model of deployment goes by different names: Bring Your Own Account, Customer Managed VPC, and a few others. But essentially, the goal for this model of deployment is to support the top-of-mind requirements for the privacy-conscious customers by ensuring all of the data resides in their VPC while still relying on ClickHouse to manage deployments. So this includes monitoring health, managing upgrades, patches, all of the operational tasks. So this, in some sense, is best of both worlds, where the users are offloading the operational overhead but at the same time, ensuring that they're best protecting their customer data to comply with the strictest of the data residency guidelines. Next slide, please. So zooming in a little bit on what this looks like, essentially all of the data plane components, this includes compute and storage, logs, metrics, anything that contains sensitive customer data will reside in the customer's VPC, whereas all of the UI components, essentially the control plane, will reside in the ClickHouse VPC. We will ensure secure access for setup, and once the service is running, the only data that will leave the customer's VPC is telemetry such as usage and health metrics. This model of deployment not only serves security and compliance requirements, but also has been brought up oftentimes as a requirement to manage costs, especially by those customers that have deep discounts on infrastructures that they've negotiated with their cloud service provider and are hence able to operate and scale in a lot more cost-effective manner. Another cost advantage this model provides is you're able to co-locate apps within the same VPC and use technologies such as peering to reduce costs and egress. So this addresses both security, TCO, and in addition offers a lot more flexibility when it comes to running in the right instance type and configuration that best suits your workload. And we just launched a waitlist page yesterday for this model. Please do sign up. We'll keep you posted with updates as we make progress towards GA, which is timed closer to the end of the year. With that, I'll hand it back to Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krithika. Great. And I should mention that please do ask questions in chat. We also will try to triage them. And for those that we don't answer, or for those that really we think deserve broader discussion, we will handle them at the end of the call, hopefully time allowing. So at this point, I'm going to move on to user console, and Zach and Christina will walk us through that. Zach and Christina are a product manager and designer, respectively, focusing on our cloud console. So at this point, I'm going to unshare my screen, and actually starting with Zach, we're going to hear about what's happening.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Just a quick bit of context here. My name's Zach. I joined ClickHouse from a small startup called Archetype. We built a application that focused on kind of database visualization. And when Archetype first joined ClickHouse a little bit more than a year ago, our goal was pretty simple. We wanted to kind of carry over the Archetype experience to ClickHouse Cloud and basically give ClickHouse Cloud users the best possible database UI. We launched the initial SQL console application when ClickHouse Cloud became GA in December of 2022. And if you've used ClickHouse Cloud at all, you've noticed that we basically now have two separate applications. One is kind of the overall control plane application, where you can kind of conduct service level operations. And then this control plane application links out to our SQL console application, which is like currently separate from the overall cloud console experience. So since we joined a year ago and stood up the initial SQL console, we've primarily worked to rebuild the ClickHouse Cloud control plane experience from the ground up. And today, we're excited to show you the culmination of this past year's work on the new cloud console. So if you've used ClickHouse Cloud at all in the past year, this service list page should look pretty familiar. You'll be presented with options to navigate to an existing service, create a new service, or view integrations catalog, etc. But the experience really starts to diverge when we select a service. When you open a service in the new Cloud Console, you'll immediately land in the SQL console, where you can begin exploring and querying your data in just a couple of clicks. One thing you'll notice here is the sidebar. This new navigation system contains everything you should need to operate and manage your ClickHouse service. But say you want some more screen real estate just for the SQL console to query your data, that's not a problem at all. You can very easily just collapse this sidebar and make the SQL console truly front and center. Just beneath the SQL console nav item in the sidebar, you'll see an option called data sources. Our vision here is that getting data into your ClickHouse service should be straightforward and intuitive. So if you need to ingest data from a local file, an S3 bucket, a Kafka stream, all of this functionality can be found in one consolidated place. We've also tried to make operating your ClickHouse Cloud service as straightforward as possible with the new settings page. From here, you can perform operations such as stopping and starting your cluster, adjusting auto-scaling settings, creating traffic filtering rules, and adjusting SQL console access levels. Okay, so say you've created a service, you've configured IP filtering, you've loaded your data, and now you need to just connect to ClickHouse from your application. You may notice that there's this new connect button that also lives in the sidebar. Clicking it opens a modal that displays your service's connection strings for HTTP, native, and JDBC interfaces, and also gives instrumentation examples for common language clients such as Python and Node.js. So operating at a service scope level is great, but what if you have multiple services? You need to be able to switch between them fairly quickly. The new Cloud Console has a service selector built directly into the sidebar, and switching between services takes only 2 clicks. Layout and functionality aside, the Cloud Console will have an entirely new look and feel. As part of this project, we created and open sourced our very own component library called ClickUI, and every element on every page that you'll see in the console is completely built from these components. This has a few positive side effects, but in my opinion, the coolest one is that the Cloud Console now supports dark mode. Personally, I'm a huge fan of dark mode. I think it makes our console feel like a rocket ship cockpit. For example, this monitoring page looks pretty incredible, and the SQL console is also super easy on the eyes. Yeah, overall, I'm just super excited about introducing dark mode. There are so many more things we could kind of go through and demo here for the new Cloud Console, and like selfishly, I'm having fun admiring our work here. But the ClickHouse ethos is go try it and see for yourself. So please reach out if you want early access. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christina.
Thank you, Zach, for the great demo. Hey, everyone. My name is Christina, and I'm a product designer here at ClickHouse. We know that getting started with ClickHouse can be a daunting experience, especially if you're a new user, which is why we want to introduce a guided onboarding flow. It will consist of 5 steps listed in our preferred order, but they can be followed in any order you want. This guided onboarding flow will also have its own entry in the side panel. And on the right-hand side, we will also display complementary info such as video and links in a dedicated section related to the section that you're navigating to. Now, we know that not everybody will be interested in this getting started flow. If you're an experienced user, and especially if you operated with ClickHouse and with ClickHouse Cloud in the past, you might want to skip this onboarding flow, and you can do so by clicking the button at the bottom called Skip Onboarding. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the first things that we are going to ask you is to add data, because that is when ClickHouse truly shines, especially if you ingest a lot of data. We want to highlight 4 main ways to add data, which is using ClickPipes. So you can ingest the streams of data through Kafka, S3, GCS, and many others. We also want to highlight uploading a file, then connecting with your app, which is something that Zach just demoed. We also want to let you start with an empty table, because why not? Maybe you want to get started from scratch. And we also want to offer 2 secondary options, which is a link to the data sources page, where you can find all of the ways in which you can ingest data into your service, and also a link to our integrations page. Next slide. Okay, well, as a third step, we also want to shed light on some important settings, such as configuring idling and IP filtering. So we wanted to make idling, the configuration of idling, a little bit more fun, and we wanted to ask users how do they plan to use their service. And based on that, we want to suggest some sensible defaults. Then when it comes to IP filtering, if you're already a cloud user, you know that this is part of the service creation flow, but we are extracting it from there and putting it into this onboarding flow. Then last but not least, we are also offering a link to the settings page that will take you to the page that Zach also demoed, where you can find all of the available settings that you have for your service. Next. As a 4th step, we want to invite you to invite your team members. If you are part of an organization or if you are building a project with your colleagues, you can invite them and share your assets. But we also know that you might be flying solo. So in that case, you can either skip it or mark this step as completed. And now, last but not least, we wanted to surface our vast ecosystem of integrations. We have them split here into 4 categories: databases and data warehouses, data visualization tools, streams, logs, and analytics, and language clients and drivers. Here we are listing the most popular integrations, but we are also offering a link where you can view all of the integrations that we have available, that are quite a few. Again, this step is not mandatory, so you can just mark it as completed if you want to skip it. We're hoping that you find this useful. Let us know what you think in the comments. And now back to you, Zach.
It's me again. We have features in the Cloud Console coming very soon that we wanted to kind of give everyone a sneak peek of. And the first one is query sharing and access control. So if you've used the SQL console at all in the past year, one thing you've noticed is that we have this notion of saved queries. So you can kind of write a query once, name it, save it, and then other members of your team can view it, modify it, etc., with kind of minimal effort. One caveat being that all queries that you save in the SQL console right now are shared between all users who have access to that particular service. This can be a little bit troublesome sometimes because maybe you don't want to share a query with everybody on your team. Maybe it's just for you. Maybe it's just for DBAs on your team. Who knows? But in any event, basically the goal here is to kind of provide users the ability to give specific access to queries and folders containing queries to other members or role groups on their team. This should be especially helpful for large organizations with multiple teams and dozens of members all working in a given workspace. I guess secondarily, queries will be private by default and no longer clutter the entire team's workspace unless you decide to share them. And this will also enable us to implement a highly requested feature, which is saved query auto-saving. So we can periodically auto-save your changes without creating new clutter in your workspace for everybody else. Next up, query API endpoints. Again, this is another hugely requested feature. Basically, the goal is to allow users to create and expose REST API endpoints for saved queries in just a couple of clicks. This should be a big win for developers who want to instrument an API call in their code exactly once and then iterate on the underlying query as needed. It'll also make it pretty easy to create internal tooling or reporting functionality. Think like Slack bots that post daily analytics updates, or even programmatic daily data loading. And finally, a new cool one. Obviously, we're in the midst of this Gen AI boom. ClickHouse is not immune. So we've kind of been working on a Copilot-style query suggestions built straight into the SQL console query editor. If you can see in this GIF, as I'm typing, I get this kind of grayed out completion suggestion that's being returned by Gen AI. And I've tried it quite a bit myself. It works incredibly well. I'm super excited to share this with everybody. If you want early access to this feature, please reach out and we can enable it for you. And with that, on to Letitia.
Thank you so much, Zach. This is great. And there's some great questions both in Q&A and chat that we'll try to address async, but also some of them we'll cover live. So thank you for those questions. Lots of excitement. Yes, we're going to talk about security and reliability. And here I would like to introduce Letitia, who is our GRC lead. I had to actually look up what that meant. It stands for Governance, Risk Management, and Compliance. And there's no better person on our team to cover this topic. Letitia is an expert and works with our most sensitive customers from an industry compliance perspective to define the roadmap for this area. So Letitia, if you wouldn't mind, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Tanya. As you heard in the previous slides with Zach and Christina, one of the things that we try to do is we try to make things easy for you. So security is no different. One of those things that we try to do is, number one, make it easy for you to interact with the product. But the other thing is making it easy to get to a yes with your security team. So if we want to go to the next slide, some of the things that we've been working on over the past couple of quarters, we already had strong authentication in our product. So anybody that knows what NIST is, we have NIST 800-63 compliant passwords. That means that they're strong. Your security team will be happy if you're using user ID and password. We do have multi-factor authentication options so that we can further secure your account. And you can also log in with your Google account. So that makes it a little bit easier in terms of fewer user IDs and passwords to remember. We recently enabled SAML. This is a security assertion markup language. It's basically a new way to integrate with your account so you can use your SSO provider. That's going to be Okta, Microsoft, Google, those types of things, to sign into your control plane accounts. So this is available in limited release right now, and we'll be looking forward to a little bit more broad release a little bit later in the year. I'm very excited to bring that, as it makes it a lot easier to get past those security reviews. More things that are on our roadmap. We are looking at social login for your Microsoft accounts, your GitHub accounts, and then also looking to enable SCIM, which is that ability to basically manage users. So it makes your user access management teams much happier. So next slide. So a little bit more to come on this. We also are adding more support for backups. So this enables you to not only we currently have 2 backups for free within the platform. So your data is secure, but it's also backed up. You can, with on-demand backups, specify when you would actually like to take a backup. You can do backup frequency, so a little bit more frequently than daily if you'd like to. You can back up once a week, custom scheduling, and you can also save your backups to your S3 buckets. So next slide is actually the one that's near and dear to my heart. So my goal for ClickHouse and for you is actually for you to be able to bring all of your data. One of the things that when you're going through a security review with your internal folks is if you're planning on bringing sensitive data into another platform, they'll have higher levels of controls that they expect. So things that we're working on right now, we are working on our roadmap for HIPAA. So we're looking to bring protected health information into the platform, kind of targeting the first half of this year. We would like to hear from you if you're interested in this part of the product. We're bringing to you, we already have secure connections with IP filters. We already have support for hashed passwords. We have a customer managed encryption option so you can bring your own encryption keys, and then detail logging that really helps you achieve those compliance requirements. The second thing that we're working on is working towards a self-managed install in our federal space. This is going to be a little bit more than just the open source product, bringing in compute and storage into the picture, full end-to-end encryption, because in the federal space, that's actually one of the harder things to achieve. And then APIs to enable your automation. So we're also looking into FedRAMP. That's going to be something that we're looking into for the long term. The self-managed install is something we're looking at shorter term. And then for PCI, bringing credit card information outside of your systems into a managed database is tricky, especially with the new PCI requirements that are coming out this year. So PCI 4.0 is going to be in effect soon. We're bringing improved user management. There's outbound traffic control that is a new requirement within PCI. And then we also have the granular encryption options. So that's something that we are targeting a little bit later. Again, if you're interested in any of these, please visit our Trust Center. That's trust.clickhouse.com, or email us at trust@clickhouse.com. Back to you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Leticia. And just one anecdote. Before we hired even a single cloud engineer, we had a security engineer on board to think through the security and privacy footprint of our cloud. We deal with your data. We don't take it lightly. And you see that reflected with our focus on this topic. So thank you so much, Leticia. At this point, I'm very excited to move on to the core update. So again, we're going to focus on core features that are going to underlie our cloud platform. And we're going to kick off with Melvin, who's going to cover the architecture part of the evolution. And then Alexei, who probably needs no introduction. Alexei is a creator of ClickHouse. He is our co-founder and CTO, is going to talk through some more specifics and actually show a demo. Just really quick, Melvin, do you want me to share slides?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Let me quickly do that. And Hopefully folks can tell me if you can see my screen. Very good. All right, so Melvin is a product manager for Core Database, working very closely with Alexei and team. Melvin, please take it away.
Yep, sure. Thank you very much, Tanya. So we wanted to talk to you about all the architectural change that we are doing around ClickHouse to make sure that ClickHouse Cloud has the best user experience. So I'm going to walk you through all this architectural change that we did and that we are going to do. And then Alexei is going to show you all the advancements that we did in terms of performance improvement for ClickHouse Cloud, and he's going to show you in a live demo how really fast ClickHouse Cloud is. So the first topic that we are going to talk about is probably around SharedMergeTree. So if you don't know what SharedMergeTree is, before SharedMergeTree, when you created a table in ClickHouse, you created a table, and these tables metadata will be stored on each one of your compute nodes in your cluster. And even though that was okay at the time, it means that ClickHouse Keeper in this scenario was used to synchronize this metadata across your nodes, but it has many challenges. The first one being that every time you add one more node, you had to replicate this metadata to this new node. So it made scalability, adding more nodes to ClickHouse, a bit slow. And as you know, at ClickHouse, we don't like things that are slow. So that's something that we wanted to address. The second issue that we had with this model was that whenever you had like a large cluster with a lot of nodes, this metadata always needed to be kept in sync. And that was a lot of work for ClickHouse Keeper, and sometimes it was impacting your instead throughput and background operation. So we thought long and hard about how we could address this problem, and we created a SharedMergeTree. On the next slide, I can show you how actually SharedMergeTree is behaving. So for SharedMergeTree, now the metadata are not stored on the compute node directly. They are actually stored in ClickHouse Keeper. So it means that adding more nodes is a seamless operation, and we can just add one more node. It's connecting to ClickHouse Keeper, and now we can have access to all the metadata. And it also allows us to improve throughput operation for background merges, inserts, and mutations, meaning that ClickHouse is even more efficient than before. So SharedMergeTree is our cloud-native replacement of replicated merge-tree. You can test it out today. If you go to ClickHouse Cloud, create a new service, and you will be able to, by default, use SharedMergeTree and test it out and let us know what you think about it. One other change that we want to do around the architecture of ClickHouse Cloud is around our caching layer. So on the next slide, you can see that this is how our cache is currently working. So you created a service in ClickHouse Cloud. Each compute node has a cache layer, right? And depending on the activity of this node, depending on the queries that are being sent to this node, each node is going to have like a slightly different cache, right? And adding one more node means that we will need to have a new node with an empty cache that will need to be populated as the query are coming in. That's good, but we want to do something better. In the future, what we want to introduce is something called distributed cache. So if you move to the next slide, you can see what it will look like. So now we want to separate compute nodes from the caching layer. So you're going to have a distributed cache service that will hold all your cache. And now adding more nodes, the new node will just need to connect to this distributed cache service, and it will be able to access to all the cached data. And your distributed cache service will be directly connected to your object storage. So that allows us to have new nodes having access to the cache from the get-go, and that will also help us synchronizing the cache through all your compute nodes. And this is something that our development team is currently testing and developing. Now, the last architectural change that we want to talk to you about in today's session is around background operation. So if on the next slide, you will see that as of today, when you insert, if you're familiar with ClickHouse, when you insert data into ClickHouse, these data are going into parts. And when you have many parts, ClickHouse is going to trigger a background operation to merge, these data parts, create a larger data parts, allowing us to have less file to manage and like better query performance. These background operations are executed by every compute node in your cluster. But there is a better model that we are designing and that we're implementing right now And on the next slide, maybe I will be able to talk to you more about it. It's called Stateless Worker. So instead of having your background operation being done directly by your compute nodes, what we want to have is we want to have stateless workers that are outside of your cluster. And your compute node can just process your query, and whenever they want to do a background operation, they can just connect to one of the stateless worker, send the background operations they actually want to process, and the stateless worker will just execute this operation. It doesn't need to have access to the whole cluster. It can just do it. You can just do it in the background, and your compute nodes now are dedicated to your query processing, allowing your user to have like the best query performance. So that's something that we are currently working on. And now I'm going to hand it over to Alexei, that is going to talk to us about the advancement in terms of performance, and he's going to do a demo of ClickHouse Cloud.
Well, Alexei brings up his screen. Yes, Melvin, very exciting. But what Alexei is going to talk about is what we've already been able to achieve, even with existing architecture. So imagine how much better it's going to get once we have the additional components. Alexei, please take it away.
Thank you. So I will answer a question. How fast is ClickHouse Cloud? And to answer this question, actually, I have to raise more questions. The first one is about insert performance. How quickly can you insert data into ClickHouse Cloud? And to answer this, 1 year ago, we created a task named Insert Scalability Challenge. We needed it to test our new engine, new table engine, SharedMergeTree. And the task was stated as quite simple. Take a data set with 400 billion records and insert it as quickly as possible and find all possible ways how it could break. And we expected that it will break. And we succeeded to break it. So the challenge is actually just 2 queries. You can even reproduce it by yourself. You create a table and you do a single parallel distributed insert select. And it will work for quite a while, loading data from S3, inserting into this table. And I also listed 10 requirements. Like the cluster should successfully scale to 100 replicas. It should not break during the insert. Everything should work. The speed of insertion should remain uniform. Every replica should participate in merging. And you can do real-time select queries at the same time. And these queries remain real-time. And backups should work. And the service should successfully restart. And it should quickly restart in just a few seconds. And more importantly, the progress bar and metrics should work in ClickHouse client during all this insert query. It is a blocker. Okay, and the first results were in April 2023. So it successfully inserted 400 billion records in less than an hour on 50 replicas. And the speed is 125 million records per second. And you might say, this is impressive. And it is impressive if you compare ClickHouse to some other databases, like old-fashioned databases. But for ClickHouse, it is just the start of conversation about how we will optimize it. And we have to optimize it because we noticed that it did not use all the resources for merges. And it created too many parts after the insertion, and selects were slow. And the startup time, if you restart the server, was more than 5 minutes. And there was no progress bar. But I like green, nice progress bar in ClickHouse client. So we had to fix all these problems and improve it even more. And actually, I was not satisfied with this challenge because nothing breaks during the insert, and I want to break something. So I made this challenge even harder by introducing fault injections in our staging environment in ClickHouse Cloud. We introduce very multiple stress testing. Like we constantly scale clusters, scale out and scale in. We constantly take a random machine and just destroy it. And we also enabled fault injections in the network communication between ClickHouse server and ClickHouse keeper. And with these complications, the test did not pass. And we had to fix all the problems to introduce seamless retries. So everything should finish nevertheless, despite all these complications. And finally, just a month ago, I tested again, and here is the result. The number of records even increased during this time. So it was 440 billion records, and they were inserted in less than 15 minutes on 100 of replicas with a speed of 498 million records per second. Am I satisfied with this result? Actually not, because it has to be 2 million records more. I want 500 million records per second, and I know when I will get 500 million records per second, I will not be satisfied. I will ask, I want to go to the 1 billion records per second for insertion speed. Okay, all replicas participated in merges. There were more than 1,000 of concurrent merges, and Piper was not loaded at all. It was chilling. The startup time was just a few seconds. Real-time selects remain real, and the progress bar was fixed. Okay. But actually, it was just a test. It is always nice to do these tests, but customers' workloads are even better and always more interesting. So we came prepared, and here is a case study from one of our customers. They migrated 1.5 petabytes of compressed data in about 2 weeks, using just 20 replicas during the insertion. After the data was inserted, they scaled it down to 10 replicas, and 10 replicas are enough to serve all the real-time load, including continuous insertion and real-time selects for customer reports. So it is pretty nice, 1.5 petabytes on just 10 replicas, and the cost is very moderate, I would say. Okay, so what about select performance? And there are multiple questions. How quickly do you get the answer for your query? Can you get a sub-second performance on tens of billions of records? The answer is yes. How well does it scale? Can you scale to hundreds of replicas in ClickHouse Cloud? The answer is yes. And does it maintain low latency if you scale it up and do massively distributed queries? And you have to ask this question because you know that we use separation of storage and compute. We use object storage plus multi-level cache, as Melvin presented. Would you get a higher latency? Will it be fast? The answer is it will be fast. So how do you want me to prove it? And to prove it, I created a demo. I like demos, so I prepared one demo for you. Let me show it. Let me continue sharing and show this demo for you. So it looks like something strange. And you might ask a question, what it is. Actually, I really like nice pictures, so I made a website, and this website does not have any backend. It is just JavaScript plus ClickHouse. ClickHouse is queried directly. And whenever you navigate, it renders some tiles in real time. And to render any tile, it has to query a data set with 30 billion records in real time, on the fly. I can go to any place and do whatever I want. And do you know what it is? Maybe anyone can guess. Please write your answers to the chat. I will give you just 3 seconds to try to guess. And let me play with this service. I will switch to another query. And you have to guess what it is. So, and at the top right, you can see the progress bar. And when I switch it to this query, it looks like a nice flower. So this data set is 30 billion of traces about the positions, velocity, altitude, and type and registration number, and basically everything about airplanes, and not only airplanes, also helicopters, gliders, ground vehicles, whatever. And it does everything in real time. I can even show and edit. I will make it larger so you will see. I can even edit the query. For example, what it is. This is all the flights of KLM, and you can check where does KLM fly. It flies to the United States, to Mexico, even to Chile with one connection. I can edit the query and switch, for example, to Air France to get another nice flower or to, what is your favorite airline? I don't know. American. Here is American Airlines. But what is more interesting, I can even let me do some entertainment and select gliders. And we can see a lot of interesting stuff happening. And I can even select anything and get a nice report in real time. So interesting. And I can even select some type of glider and show the report specifically for this glider, or select just a single registration number, and it will also does something interesting. Or let me, yeah, it's pretty nice. This particular glider has a lot of travel. I can play infinite time with the service, so please forgive me if we will run out of time. For example, this is the report about year when the airplane was built, and the red is some old airplanes, and I can select these old airplanes. It is pretty nice, and some of them are not really old. And I can select a particular type like this, or I can, for example, what if I will select DC3? DC3, and I found it is still flying. It is still still operational. Interesting why OpenStreetMap does not load below, but it is not a problem with ClickHouse, it is just OpenStreetMap tiles. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. But how do you want me to show how fast it is? Let me do like this and generate quite a large report about half of the world. And you can see at the top right corner, you can see at the top right corner, okay, 165 gigabytes per second. Actually, you did not even pay attention to this because it was fast. It was sub-second. You don't have to pay attention. When it is fast, it finishes instantly. You don't have to worry how many hundreds of gigabytes or even terabytes per second does it process. Okay, so what about select performance? To achieve this, we did a speed up for our implementation for parallel replicas. In ClickHouse Cloud, each of the node acts like a replica, so it has access to all the data and as a shard at the same time. So the queries can be parallelized, and they parallelize dynamically. They can use as many resources as available. So we optimized it for better cache locality, better tail latency, and on 100 of replicas with 30 CPUs each, we get 365.90 gigabytes per second. Okay, but what about background operations? It is not enough to process insert queries fast, select queries fast, because when you do insert, the system has to accommodate your data. Every insert is immediately written to the object storage, it is durable, and it is written to ClickHouse Keeper for strong consistency. And we had to optimize ClickHouse Keeper for memory usage. So just a single Keeper cluster can handle petabytes, metadata for petabytes of data. And we had to optimize background merges so they don't use all the memory. And you can process thousands of merges in parallel after heavy insertions. And as a bonus, we also developed adaptive mode for asynchronous inserts. It means that you can do frequent inserts with default settings and don't worry at all. Okay, that's probably it.
Thank you so much, Alexei. Yeah, I did want to just mention before we go on to the last section around integrations is we don't even have time really on this call to cover, in addition to features supporting our core cloud, all of the features of the database itself that we release monthly. So again, just a quick plug, come to our community call. There's a lot that every month our database team, as well as our broader community of contributors, adds to the arsenal of functions and SQL support that we cover, as well as performance improvement and SQL compatibility optimizations. Come to this call. Without further ado, I'll pass it off to Riyad. So Alexei, maybe if you could unshare your screen, I believe Riyad also has a demo for us. So last but not least, we'll talk about integrations. And while Riyad is sharing his screen, I'll just mention that for us, integrations is a really important and strategic investment. We recognize that ClickHouse as a data platform is often part of a stack that you're using internally for different use cases. You may be using it for observability, and then it's very important for you, our integration, say, with shippers like OpenTelemetry or Grafana. You may be using it as an internal data stack for your internal data analysts or data scientists. So BI tool support, as well as support for something like dbt becomes important. So we recognize that, and we actually have a full team that is responsible for waking up every morning, building some of those integrations, and also supporting them, as far as our community and our partners building these integrations as well. So with that, Riyad is a product manager for integrations. He'll take it away.
Thanks, Tanya. Hello, everyone. I'm Riyad, and I have the very hard task of presenting something after all the great content we just saw. So please bear with me, and I'll talk about the integrations, which is often the kind of hidden part of the iceberg of a successful open source project. People think of the main project as kind of obviously the database, but no one really runs just ClickHouse, except maybe Alexei here on the call, but people run it part of a broader stack, and they need to integrate with many, many components. And what we try to achieve in the integrations team is to make sure the focus on quality and performance we have in ClickHouse is also expanded to the ecosystem around ClickHouse. We also try to make sure that the usability of the integrations is up to highest quality standards and that they really address the use cases they are designed for. And for this, we built last year a dedicated platform called ClickPipes, which is our managed service to move data to ClickHouse Cloud. I like to think of it as a kind of very dedicated ETL with like one destination, ClickHouse Cloud. So we optimized this destination the best as we could. And we started shipping a Kafka connector. That was the first connector we shipped for like open source Kafka. But I'm happy to say that we are expanding on ClickPipes quite a lot. We just added support for various Kafka flavors. It's a space where basically a lot of distributions exist. So we support things like Confluent, MSK, Red Panda, Upstash, WarpStream, even Hub. You name it, we should have it. If you don't see your logo there, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to expand. Since we have the foundations, now it's just a matter of like changing some of the authentication settings usually, or some of the supported formats. We are working on some other very exciting features like a dedicated S3 connector for ClickPipes. So it's a UI-driven workflow. You just provide your bucket, a blob pattern, we match some files, we check the connectivity and security settings. We show you a preview of your files, and then you hit run, and we start a ClickPipe, and we start ingesting your data. From S3, phase one will be like for bulk data loading, reliably ingesting high volumes of data. And in phase two, we will ship the continuous version, basically turning an object storage bucket into a staging area for your ClickHouse environment. We'll support S3 and GCS at launch. We are adding support for Avro, which is a highly requested data format in the Kafka space, and we should have it this quarter, as well as an Amazon Kinesis connector. It's another streaming technology from Amazon, and was a highly requested feature. And I'm happy to say that we should have it in ClickPipes very, very soon. I'll try to go quickly here and talk a little bit about our observability strategy. We published a piece in December about the notion of SQL-based observability. And in short, what it means is that basically we think that with the maturity of real-time all-app stores and the open source and standardization happening in the observability space around technologies like Kubernetes, like OpenTelemetry, like Grafana, now is the right time to kind of merge these two tracks together and use an real-time all-app store like ClickHouse to provide SQL-based observability, which is a pretty fantastic idea. More details are available in the blog post, but what it means is that our observability story is like an integration story right now. It means from collection to storage to visualization, we need to provide best of breed solutions for each step. And we are tackling this in each layer, starting with the visualization layer, and the de facto kind of visualization tool our observability users are using is Grafana. So we just shipped actually this week the Grafana V4 version of our plugin. It grew organically initially into a very standard experience, but V4 was the opportunity for us to rethink the experience. So we improved the UX, really made it more tailored towards an OpenTelemetry based flow. And I'll stop talking and just show you how it looks like. If I go to a Grafana instance here, hit explore, and let's say we want to see some traces, I hit run, and I already have some traces on my screen, and it took me literally, 2 seconds to get there. So it's pretty opinionated. And the way we do it is that we ask some questions at the data source creation. So you have your connectivity settings, obviously, but we have this whole block of logs and traces configuration. And if you're an hotel user, you just flip the toggle here. If you have custom data, you provide this kind of metadata so that we know about your schema and your data set, and you can continue exploring. Let's say this time I explore some logs, and same thing, you have logs like flowing here, and we have also this bridge between tracing and logging experiences. It's called Grafana Glue. We support that, and it's highly opinionated, but very streamlined for a great SRE experience, and you can build fully fledged dashboards like this one that our colleague Spencer, who built this plugin, created to highlight the main features. Big thanks to the team who worked on that, Dale, Spencer, Christina, everyone who helped. All right, that was just like I cherry-picked these main features, but a lot is happening beside that. Just this past few months, we've been improving the support of Apache Beam, which is pretty important to our Google Cloud users because it's what Dataflow uses underneath. We improved the performance of our Kafka Connect sync. We improved the compatibility of the MySQL interface or ClickHouse, sorry, which means that you can connect things like QuickSight, Power BI, Tableau through this, even if native ClickHouse compatibility is not available. A lot is happening in the DBT space in Java. I'll just go through it real quick since we are a bit over time. Actually, I can spend maybe the next half an hour talking about it, but I'll keep it short. If you have any integrations you don't see in this list or you wish that we improved the support for, just reach out to us in Slack, Twitter, or any of the available channels. We are always looking for feedback to make sure we have good coverage and good quality integrations. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Riyad. Thank you. And thank you for those that stuck around. I know at the top of the hour, a few of you had to jump off. Let's have the speakers turn on their video. And for the remaining attendees, let's cover a few of the questions live. We had great questions in chat, in the Q&A, and I think some of them would benefit from broader coverage. If you do have to jump off, this is recorded. We will share the recording after the fact. But I think the first question maybe is about the demo that you showed at Exade. There were so many excited comments about it. And one of the questions was, do you plan to release it live for others to take inspiration from it in terms of how to structure your queries or maybe write an application like that is kind of deeply immersive and powered by data?
Yeah, I want to release this demo live because it is a good example, a good use case, how you can visualize anything on the map. It is not limited to this data set. You can use it for many other data sets. Many of them are less massive, but maybe you will find even more massive data sets. So there is one problem. I still have to write a README for this project. I have not done it yet.
Yeah. It's always a documentation, huh?
Yeah. But it is basically ready. So we will see. You can ask, maybe if more people will ask on our social channels, I will try to open it earlier.
Sounds good. So yeah, if you're on social media, just mention us and let us know that you want this demo live. All right, sounds good, Alexei. Riyad, I'll kind of work my way backwards maybe. There were also questions throughout the webinar about tools to pull data from S3. So there were a couple of questions specific to S3Q capability that we released in a core database and recently made production ready. And also specifically the ClickPipes UI. There were some questions about how does it work? Is it streaming? Is it polling? So maybe you can answer both of them and kind of also maybe just clarify how they relate to each other. Oh, and so, sorry, there was also a question as to, is it only S3 or will this feature also be available, for instance, for GCS? And, you know, when we have Azure Blob support, like, is it going to be across cloud providers?
Yeah, all right. I'll start with the last question. So when we will release it, probably this quarter, it will be for S3 and GCS. Both will be supported, and we will add support for Azure Blob Storage later this year, since we have core capabilities in ClickHouse now to talk to Azure Blob Storage through the Azure Blob Storage and the clustered version of the function. So it will follow later. And on the initial question, so S3Q is now prod ready. It's a SQL-based experience where you declare your S3Q table engine and attach a materialized view. And from there, you start pulling events. It's available to everyone. ClickPipes, on the other hand, is a fully managed experience with a UI that comes with like monitoring of the job. The way it works is that it works at a file unit. So if, let's say, you have 1 million files in your bucket, we keep track of all the files. There's a state we manage. We make sure we ingest the files reliably, and we have like managed failure scenarios, managed retry scenarios, so that we're not losing any data. So you don't need to think a lot about your kind of large ETL task. ClickPipes does it for you, gives you your progress, gives you your accurate count, gives you monitoring on top of it for large bulk uploads. And the very next feature we will enable later on in phase 2 is just to flip a switch and make this job a continuous one, meaning that we will monitor the bucket for any new added files.
Thank you very much, Riyad. Sounds good. All right. If you have additional questions about integrations, do drop them in chat. If we don't cover them live, we can reach back out to you or cover it in some other way through, say, our community Slack. So maybe next question, again, working backwards a bit. Melvin and Alexei, there were a few questions that came in while you were describing the core features supporting our cloud offering. One was about parallel replicas. Basically, you know, Alexei, you talked about massively just big queries dealing with a lot of data. Clearly, they need to be processed in cloud by more than one replica. How does that work? Is that something that's available already? Any caveats? Melvin did answer in kind of the Q&A app, but I think maybe it'd be worth covering live. So I don't know if Alexei wants to cover it or if Melvin, you want to start.
No, go ahead, Alexei.
Yeah. So this setting is not enabled by default, but it can be enabled on larger clusters. So if you scaled up your cluster to a larger number of replicas, it is recommended to also enable parallel replicas. Both operations are available through the support request. So when you use ClickHouse Cloud, you have a settings tab with the scaling options. And vertical scaling is what you can do with self-service, and there is also a switch of the number of replicas. And this switch is currently disabled for self-service, but you just make a support request and your cluster is scaled to whatever replicas you want.
Thank you. That sounds great. And maybe just a follow-on question. There was also a comment that frequently users may run into a query that runs out of resources. And when it comes to automatic scaling, it's something that works, kind of not on a per query basis. So yeah, you still may get some exception and your application has to deal with it. Any tips in ClickHouse Cloud in particular when it comes to dealing with out-of-memory errors? Melvin, again, I think you answered that in the Q&A app, but anything to comment on live? So either of you.
So in the case when you see some unusual message, like if you see that the query does not have enough memory, the solution is easy. Just scale your cluster up. If you did not disable auto-scaling, it will also be scaled up. Not at the moment of this particular query, but after some time. We have this feedback for auto-scaling. But if you have something unusual, the best you can do is just to make a support request and we will check.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. So moving on to, again, working backwards, maybe we can talk a little bit about reliability features. Letitia and maybe Kritika, you can also help answer. During the risk and security section, there was a question about bring your own buckets for backups. And we did answer it in chat, but I just wanted to maybe talk about it a little bit live. What is that feature? Why is it important? When is it coming?
I can start, and Letitia, feel free to add. So bring your own bucket for backups is essentially being able to manage copies of the backup in your own account. So the idea is we still have a backup for you managed, but outside of that, if you have additional guidelines around DR, you are able to export a copy and maintain it within your own account and have retention policy that you can configure and control. So the timeline that we're targeting for this feature is early Q2, and the plan is to support both AWS and GCP-based deployments, which will be live at that time.
Thank you so much. Okay, very good. And now going to the console section, there were, again, very good comments during both Christina and Zach's presentation. I thought the good question actually to answer here would be less about the user-facing features and more for operators. And Zach, there was a question about improvements to specifically our support console, which is embedded in our cloud console. Do we have any plans to spruce that up as part of the unified console? What's really coming here?
100%, yeah. To the point here, our support portal definitely has some room for improvement as is. So as we kind of migrate over to the unified console, I think within Q1, we hope to add 3 new kind of improvements to the support portal in general. Number 1 is allowing users to close their own support cases. This is kind of a no-brainer, obviously. The second is to allow users to adjust themselves the severity level of the case. Obviously, also a no-brainer. And then third and finally, also kind of expose better all of the support services program documentation better in the UI. Coming down the pike a little bit later, we kind of also want to introduce users to the support portal a little bit better with like a onboarding/walkthrough experience specific to the support portal. And then also kind of some additional ancillary features. But I guess primarily, Vladimir, if you're still on the call, if you don't mind, I'd love to reach out to you and talk about exactly kind of what pain points you're hitting in the support portal so we can kind of work with you to improve things further.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach. All right. Last but not least, I'll leave a question to myself and Kelly, actually. So we didn't have a chance to introduce Kelly earlier. Kelly is our product marketing lead. So she works very closely with our team of technical content engineers who write our amazing blogs and do some of the demos that we also publish as part of those blogs. So there's actually a question that we didn't have a chance to answer live from Christopher James. I'll just read it verbatim. Our company needs very low latency data handling for stock market trading. Do you have any new videos, information? This is a huge industry, and so on. So a couple of points here. In financial services, first of all, yes, ClickHouse is used very broadly. Primarily, we see use cases for stock data or any financial trading analytics. We kind of see less like critical path, low latency trading type of use cases, but for any analytics use cases, including intraday, very fast analytics, absolutely. ClickHouse is a great database. So Kelly, not to put you on the spot, any thoughts here on content? What are we thinking in general to help support our users in this industry and maybe other industries as well? Maybe like a quick product marketing update from you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking the question. I will respond in chat as well with a couple of assets that are hopefully useful for you. If these don't cover what you're looking for in particular, we would love to hear more about that, more about where we're missing content guides and customer stories. So would love to talk to you directly if you have any feedback about those. As far as where we're growing some of our content, we have use case specific pages on our website where we walk through a handful of our core use cases, and we're starting to build out industry specific pages as well. And so that's something that we can look forward to in the next year or so. So look on the chat, I'll put some links for you there as well.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. And yeah, so it's worth mentioning that, again, some of the largest trading firms use ClickHouse for low latency trade data. This is a use case that we understand well. So do reach out to us. Don't let sort of like lack of perfect content right this moment. Don't hesitate. We have a contact form on the website. That's one way to reach out, but also just LinkedIn with us. We're all available for ongoing conversations. I know we've run way over. We're 15 minutes over. If there's something that we didn't cover live, we will try to follow up to the best that we can. Tyler, back over to you. Is there anything that we miss or that we need to do to close this call? And thank you for those that stuck around.
Yeah, fundamentally, that's exactly what I was going to say. For those of you who are watching now, of which there's more than half of you and many more on YouTube, thank you. Riyadh mentioned it obliquely. A database is only as meaningful as the data that is stored in it and the workflows that people build around it. Our users and our community, be they open source, be they ClickHouse Cloud or otherwise, are what make us excited to show up and talk for an hour and 15 minutes about all the amazing things that are going into ClickHouse. If you're hearing about ClickHouse Cloud for the first time, check us out, clickhouse.com/cloud. If you have specific questions, connect with us, clickhouse.com/Slack. If you'd love to join our monthly update calls, keep an eye out on the news and events page on clickhouse.com. Fundamentally, we are here to make your workflow successful. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Be well, everyone.